Speaking of college, we do have a little bit of college football seeping into the NFL here. Today was Caleb Williams' pro day, which means everybody's got all eyes on the presumptive first overall pick. I think at this point, knowing that the Bears have moved Justin Fields, we all know the quarterback's going to go number one. I don't think it's unfair, Jori, to say that it would be fairly shocking if that's not Caleb, right?
It's not unfair to say it would be fairly. We got a lot of fair going on there.
You're welcome.
Yes, I think it would be pretty shocking if Caleb doesn't go number one. And if you want to know about the Bears' level of interest in Caleb Williams, look no further than head coach Matt Eberflus being on site, general manager Ryan Poles, assistant general manager Ian Cunningham, and among others. Like, they brought their whole crew down there. Although, to be fair, the idea is it would be shocking that the Bears didn't pick him. But if you're wondering whether the other top drafting teams have interest, the top personnel man for the Patriots, director of college scouting Elliot Wolf, was also featured on that NFL Plus live stream of the pro day. And for the Commanders, we saw head coach Dan Quinn, general manager Adam Peters, and offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. So pretty much anyone who is important to the decision for the top three drafting teams was at USC today.
And Keenan Allen showed up too.
Yes, which that was interesting. And Caleb talked a little bit about that at his interview after, and he said that he and Keenan have hung out. They're friends. Keenan was playing for the Chargers in LA, and Caleb was playing for USC down there. And he talked about how he's a good guy, awesome dude to be around. He can give you a lot of knowledge. And I think right now, Caleb is saying he can give you a lot of knowledge. In a few months, we'll hear Caleb saying he is giving me a lot of knowledge.
Is there anything, C-Rob, we actually take away from, I don't know, and you've been around these things so often, you got a guy throwing it on air. What are we going to see today that's going to change what we've already seen on tape?
I think, it's cliche on pro days to say this, but it's true. You can only hurt yourself, really. I mean, again, if you do well at your pro days, it's expected. You're not really doing anything that teams don't expect. They probably have an idea of what your arm strength is at that point, what passes you can make on tape, you can make on air. Obviously, you get the wind up and throw it as far as you can, throws at the end. But realistically, I think unless you're just missing everybody high, your 50 throws or 60 throws, however many you decide to do, if the script isn't challenging, there can be some negativity about that. Maybe what your interaction is with other players on the field. With Caleb, he was fine. He didn't hurt himself. There were a few, Jori can tell you, there was a couple of moments where there was a little bit of an accuracy issue at times, but nothing that doesn't happen in most pro days. I think it was probably a pretty clean experience all in all. I don't know what really you take away from this. Probably the most memorable pro day I ever went to was Jamarcus Russell's. And to this day, there are people in the personnel community who tell you it's the best pro day they've ever been to with any quarterback because his arm was insane. I mean, he looked like it was quite possibly the best arm that the NFL had ever seen in a pro day workout. And I think he was pretty much perfect. And we all know how that turned out. He went to the wrong franchise. He had a number of things happen in his personal life. He got derailed and never recovered as a player. And so what does a pro day really say about that he can be so perfect at a pro day and then just go off the rails as a prospect? It's more about how he engages with people and how challenging he makes the day for himself. Some quarterbacks will go, let's throw 80 passes, because I think if you have a really heavy workload, they get an idea of like how strong your arm is over an expanse of time. And if you get out there and throw it a ton, that's impressive. If there's not arm fatigue and you get a guy who's willing to go out there and throw, 60, 70, 80 times, that's pretty impressive, I think, to teams.
Right. I think if you're a scout and you're learning something new about a guy's arm talent or athleticism at the pro day, that's probably a problem for you. But I think to echo what C-Rob was saying, I talked to an NFC scout this week and he said, and I quote, "It's very rare that a guy doesn't look good. If a guy struggles, it's more alarming than anything. Everything should look perfect on air." But this is a scout who happened to be at Bo Nix's pro day, and he was saying what stuck out to him most about Bo Nix's pro day was the command he had in the huddle, not in the command when he was throwing, but the way he was talking to his receivers, the way he was explaining the routes and what he wanted to them. And so talking to that scout and then watching Caleb's pro day today, that's what I was looking like. Okay, how much is Caleb talking to these guys? How much is the quarterback's coach giving the script to the guys? Like, what's his interactions with them before, after? How is his demeanor? Does he look stressed? And one of the things that honestly stuck out the most to me was after Caleb finishes, he gives his like perfunctory hugs, handshakes, etc. to the Bears, all the NFL people. And then he comes back with his guys, and you see, I think it must have been an offensive lineman just jump on his back from behind. You see him literally wrestle another guy. I believe it was the center. He's got handshakes with this guy. He's doing that whole like jump and hit you on the, like, what do you even describe that? Like when you jump in the air and the sides of your body touch, like, how do you describe that?
Not like
look,
that.
Jori, when I jump in there, I'm not, I think you've described it perfect. Everybody knows what you're describing. I think problem is I can't keep enough time in air.
The airborne shoulder bump that's slightly better than my first chance. I'll just keep going until I get it right. But I thought that was really notable because it was so clear that he had like individual handshakes, inside jokes, etc. with his teammates, which I care about. And then the last thing I'll say is when he did his interview after, and Steve Weish with NFL Network asked, like, what do you think about your workout? We knew you were going to do about 50 throws, a lot of work in the pocket. And he said, I missed a couple of the deep balls, and there were one or two. I think it was one where it was behind my receiver. And then he stopped. He didn't say, but I thought I did a good job, or like, but overall it went well. And I think if you're an NFL team, I know it sounds cliche, but teams love that awareness of what you did. He's remembering it afterwards. He's got the recall. I don't know if C-Rob is fixing his hat or if he's like, oh my gosh, what is she saying?
No, I was just fixing that.
No, he's making sure the fit looks good. And it does.
Yeah, you look great.
It's a happy opening day.
Crushing it, dapper. But he was pointing out what he did wrong in specifics. And I think that when you talk about a guy and the potential for growth he has in the NFL, that self-awareness and that ability to acknowledge and own what didn't go right is important. And so I don't say that because I think the pro day didn't go well. I think it went well, but I think that most guys aren't going to be perfect on their pro day, and Caleb was aware of where there was room for growth.
Yeah, this is so interesting to me, guys, because the quarterback, and we're going to talk a lot about quarterbacks later in the show. The quarterbacks this year, there are so many of them that everybody's desperately trying to find. And so there's going to be a ton of analysis. See, Rob, the one thing I'd say about, I'll go all the way back to Jamarcus. Obviously, as a fan, I watched all that. And at the time, I kept saying, look, at that age, if you'd have handed me $30 million fully guaranteed, I probably would have wrecked my life too. Like, not everybody's positioned to be able to handle the money. Not everybody's positioned to be able to handle the pressure that comes with it. Talking to Baker at the Super Bowl, he made it very clear that when he first came into the league, the pressure of being everything to a franchise was a lot for him. And so I think that's the hardest part, is that we can watch guys throw, but through it all, like, trying to figure out how quickly they process, how quickly they figure out what they see on the field, and then just figuring out as human beings how they're going to handle that pressure. I don't know that anything helps with that. And that's the variable that ultimately, C-Rob, so often determines success or failure.
Yeah, I think, well, that's why it's so important to make sure you're doing the deep dive on a quarterback in a way that matters. And it's interesting because we'll get to this when we talk a little bit later about the whole idea that taking a quarterback is a crapshoot. But when you go back to that 2021 class, which was the top three are Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, I think 11th was Fields and 15th was Mac Jones. And when you talk to people about why 4/5 of this class really went awry, some people will tell you, that was the COVID year. Like, we didn't have as good a work, particularly on the deep dive stuff, the mental stuff, the getting on campus and, meeting other people. We weren't able to really go through that full fleshed out process with these guys where we start to understand their mentality, and you try to make it up in the process, like on Zooms and stuff. It's just not the same. And so you'll actually hear some people blame that in that class on the inability to go out and understand what is this person like mentally, who do they lean on, who are the touchstones in their life when they move on to the next level that are going to be around, those types of things. And like Jamarcus, one of the things with Jamarcus, he lost someone that was close to him. He had an uncle he was very, very close to, and he passed away. And I think that really had a huge impact on him, as you said, at that age, having that money, all that pressure, and then you lose somebody in your life who has significant gravity. Those are the things that you're not going to see when you see somebody throw it 50, 60 times scripted. So pro days are nice. They're interesting to go to. It gives people an opportunity to get out and get on campus and, sneak around the building a little bit and talk to some different individuals, and then just sort of see how a player presents himself. But as Jori said, it's more about making sure you don't do the wrong things than just the right things.
And the other notable thing is, according to the NFL Network broadcast, the Bears already took Caleb to dinner this week. And so when you talk about a team that wanted to have him in early, or they wanted to have him in before they traded Justin Fields
Right.
and ultimately Caleb, and it seems his father decided that wasn't what was going to happen, for them to actually have that like extended meal with him, I mean, that's important for them.